Cultic Episode 2 is out and concludes the game, with another chapter full of challenging fights and some very interesting set pieces. But I feel with some of the redesigns and alterations, the game is kind of like less than the sum of its parts, despite a whole lot of parts to chop through. Chapter 2 takes place 6 months after the first game and a brief, very challenging interlude. The cult has now taken over, and in order to save the world, we're going to have to once again shoot, dash, and, well, hatchet our way through a variety of enemies and some very interesting locales. There are a lot of major and minor changes that Chapter 2 brings to the formula. The first has to do with the level design itself. Chapter 1 was kept relatively corridor-esque as you just kept moving forward. Chapter 2 focuses a lot more on larger and more open areas. There are more secrets, and there's also a greater variety of set pieces. And the set pieces themselves are probably some of the best parts of playing Cultic. Some of my favorites are when the game just slows down for a few minutes, turns into the horror segments from Fear or Condemned Criminal Origins. Now, of course, these segments don't last forever, and then it's back to the gunplay. And for those of you who are just tuning in, the gunplay in Cultic is focused on lots of movement and aggression, using guns, your melee, and of course in the environmental objects that you find. And these elements have been greatly emphasized in Chapter 2. And this goes with kind of like the first big point. Ammo is far more conservative in this one. A lot has to do with you just fighting far more enemies per level, and fighting a lot more melee focused ones, whether they are human or otherwise. The game really wants you to make use of your melee hatchet in order to deal with them. And I would say like one of the first upgrades you should get is upgrading the melee damage of it, so that a fully charged hit can oftentimes one-shot most of the minor enemies. It will save you a lot of trouble. Speaking of, elite class enemies have been given a touch-up in terms of their armor, and they will take quite a number of shots to go down. And this goes with the redesign of your throwables. TNT still acts as your grenade, allowing you to deal lots of minor enemies relatively easily as long as you can throw it right, or in my case just throw it completely between the legs of like 20 guys coming to get me. Molotovs take on a new, more important role as the countermeasure to armor. You see, what they've done is that fire now does damage when someone is standing in it, and then the fire kind of attaches to the character to do increased damage. This can mean the difference of spending minutes at a time killing an armored enemy versus seconds. And that goes with the bane of the new enemy introduced in Chapter 2, the Armored SWAT Trooper, who can run at you while shooting full auto with a shotgun. They kicked a dynamite stick back at me, which is hilarious, and they can take a lot of damage before they go down. And this kind of gets at the issue that I have with Cultic Chapter 2. It is noticeably harder than the first one, and a lot of it has to do with almost like balancing across the board of how the gunplay, weapons, and melee are supposed to work. In the first game, you could be relatively aggressive with your guns and still have enough ammo to deal with the enemies. Here, there's just literally not enough ammo in each level to fire on each and every enemy. You must use your throwables and your melee. The use of the Molotovs, again being strengthened, kind of is used to make more elite fights, and you'll be fighting a lot of these guys in close quarters. The issue that I have is that the onboarding doesn't do a good enough job, in my opinion, of kind of alerting the player to what the game expects of you. A long time ago, someone left a comment on one of my videos when I talked about Doom Eternal, and they complained that the game offered too much in terms of tutorials. I was telling you how to fight all the enemies, and they wanted to leave that up to the player's discretion. Cultic does just that, and I feel like it's worse off for it. If you're going into this either from playing other shooters or playing Chapter 1, you're going to be in for a very rude awakening, as there does not appear to be any onboarding about the fact that fire is supposed to be used for armored enemies. As another point, I don't remember this in the first game, but Chapter 2, and I believe the Interlude, also introduces the ability for you to pick up the enemy shields. The enemy shields are very important in Cultic. Not only do they provide a huge amount of damage mitigation, and they basically allow you to fight elite enemies in melee, because you can just use a shield to block their heavy blasts. But you can also plant the shield on the ground to create a makeshift bunker or makeshift cover. Here's the problem with the onboarding. It tells you all that under the assumption that you pick up the shield in the first place. But if you're holding a two-hand weapon or you're kind of busy doing something else, you may not even notice that you can pick up shields. And this can lead to a lot of frustration, as the game is clearly being balanced around you making use of shields, melee, and fire in order to deal with the advanced threats. And speaking about the melee, I kind of did not like it as I play more. Even with getting the damage upgrade, the issue is that it is such a short range, and what ends up happening is enemy charges at me, I strike with my heavy hit. If it doesn't kill them, they still get the hit off while they're being knocked back. And you see, the game of course has locational damage, and headshots with melee do count, but it has this issue where you kind of swing to the sideways, you swing horizontally. So if you put your targeting reticle on the enemy's head, if it's too low or if it's not aimed high enough, you'll swipe horizontally and you'll hit their chest, even if the reticle is still on their face. And again, that will lead you taking damage. If the melee was maybe like 25%, maybe a little bit further in terms of it, or farther in terms of its reach, I think it would kind of help. But I was still having these issues where a zombie jumps at me, I smack them in midair, I still get hit as they're getting knocked back by my attack. And the throwables still feel a bit clunky to use. You, again, can just throw TNT or the dynamite out whenever you want, and then you shoot what you throw out, or you have to select it as a grenade type. And each button will correspond to multiple weapons. You can set what the default will be, which I highly suggest you do, but it can still feel a little bit awkward sometimes in terms of picking stuff up and throwing in the environment. Because again, if you're playing this on the higher difficulties, you will go down very fast, as enemies are highly aggressive in this game, and again, all those melee characters are coming to get you. While level design is larger, it is certainly more maze-like compared to the first game, and this goes with having more secrets, as I said, including finding permanent health upgrades, which is the only way to improve your max health. There are a few sections I found to be a little bit cheap. There's one part where the game would spawn enemies with literally, like, there's no even attempt to try and, like, hide their position. Like, around the corner, there's nothing. I take 5 steps forward, now there's 3 kamikaze enemies who just appear completely out of the blue to now charge at you from behind. And given how the sound design works, it's very important to make sure you keep the sound high so you can hear when something's running up behind you getting ready to just mash and destroy your back. The upgrades are still highly important, and whatever weapons are going to be your preferred, you definitely want to get the damage upgrade first on them, because that means fewer bullets, which means saving your ammo. And this is again another example of a game where it is certainly harder at the start than it is as you get further along, and a lot of that is just having enough weapons that your ammo is being spread across them, so you're not just relying on Magnum and shotgun as you would in the first level. Now, there were complaints about the bosses being a little bit damage spongy, and I can definitely see that. You really, again, it comes down to using your melee predominantly against anything that it can work against, and saving your bullets for either ranged threats or the heavier enemy types. And I would suggest, if you are having trouble with Cultic, my biggest advice in terms of upgrades would be get the hatchet melee damage up, upgrade the starting pistol's damage and accuracy, and then get the charge time or the reduced charge timer on the hatchet. The accuracy improvement on the basic gun really does help. It brings it almost to the same level as the lever action rifle in terms of accuracy. And since the bullets are so plentiful, you'll be able to get a lot out of the increased damage, and will once again save your ammo for the more nastier stuff. Speaking of, I slept on the Magnum I think far too long during my play. Get that thing upgraded, and it is strong enough to stagger armored enemies and really trivializes some of those encounters. But it won't save you from a grenade to the face. As I said in the opening, Cultic feels like a lot of good individualized parts. I love the art style, the attention to detail and level design are really great. All the weapons feel really good to use, except for maybe your basic pistol. But it doesn't feel like it's coming together in as I think as satisfying of a package as I would have liked. It reminds me a little bit of when I reviewed Incision from a few weeks ago. The Incision is a far harder FPS. It was designed to be very over the top and challenging. And both games I feel are going to have an audience of people who are going to love it for that challenge, or they're going to hate it for it. I still end up liking Cultic Chapter 2, but it definitely doesn't, I think, hit as high of a high as some of the other FPSs I've had a chance to play in 2025. If you did play this one, as well as going from Chapter 1 through to Chapter 2, what did you ultimately end up thinking about it? This was played with a press key provided by the publisher. Let me take your game for a future stream, showcase, does not involve shootings of any kind, please get in touch. And with that, thanks for tuning in, and I will see everyone in another review real soon. Thanks for watching, and a special thank you to our Patreon supporters. If you enjoyed the video, do the YouTubing stuff, be sure to visit our Discord and Patreon, and if you're interested in more of my thoughts on design, check out my game design books.